I'm Gary C. Johnson. You've seen these billboards and ads that say size matters. I agree. The size that matters is the size of the results the law firm gets for their clients. We have several multi-million-dollar verdicts here in Kentucky. In fact, our firm owns the record for the single largest personal injury verdict in the state of Kentucky. That's the size that matters to you. In Kentucky, give our firm the call.
If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson drives for every dime.
Welcome to Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Simply the Law of Life provides free legal advice and encourages happiness and quality of life. Now, here's Simply the Law of Life with Gary C. Johnson and Keith Casebolt.
Hello, everyone. Welcome in to Simply the Law of Life radio program. I'm Keith Casebolt. My dear friend across from me, Gary C. Johnson.
Isn't it wonderful to be here another week?
My friend, it is fantastic just to be here. I agree with you.
I ran into a few quotations, so I'm going to share a couple of them starting off the program today, okay?
All right.
Number one, youth is a blunder, manhood a struggle, old age a regret.
Are you saying it's tough to get older?
Yeah, evidently. That was Benjamin Disraeli. Oscar Wilde, here he goes. Everyone is born a king, and yet most of us die in exile.
Amen to that, brother. Oscar, you hit the nail on the head.
Okay, here's another one. Drink not the third glass, which thou canst not tame when once it is within thee. In other words, once you drink that third glass, you're stuck. It's got you.
The third one means you're not going to quit.
Here's another one. The minority is always right.
Isn't that the truth?
Here's a good one. Resolve to be thyself and know that he who finds himself loses his misery.
I think what he's saying there, it's okay to be you.
Here's a good one. We do not do what we want, and yet we are responsible for what we are. Now that is just a fact.
Isn't that the fact?
That's what he says.
We end up being responsible, but we did what everyone else asked instead of what we wanted to do.
Civilization is nothing but a thin veneer over barbarianism.
We've seen that.
Here's one if you got to think on this one. Possessions are usually diminished by possession.
Are you saying the more you possess, the more you end up being possessed by it?
Yes, absolutely. To possess is to be possessed. Here's a good one. I cling to my imperfections as the very essence of my being.
We've all been there and done that. Old sayings become true because they are true.
Oh, Napoleon Bonaparte, this is a good one. A fool always finds a greater fool to admire him.
Oh, no. Wait a minute. If anybody comes up to you this week and tells you how much they admire you, you're going to be thinking of that quote. What was the Napoleon one you told me the time, Gary, about he could have won the war?
If he hadn't run out of ribbons.
If he just hadn't have run out of ribbons to put on people's chest, he would have won the war.
He was an ingenious thing. What he did was, if you remember, they had barons and all of those things back then and big important people.
Uh-huh.
So what Napoleon would do is if one of his soldiers did something really courageous and amazing and whatever, he would make him a baron. So all the soldiers dreamed and fantasized of being a baron. So they could whip any army because they had no fear because they were going to be a baron.
The craving
to be a baron.
So they're out there risking their lives and going the extra mile and doing bravery just so they could get the title.
Running into the machine guns and everything else so they could be the one that got to be the baron. That was ingenious.
And isn't that true of all of us in our daily lives? I mean, don't we run into things or do things because we're craving to be accepted or to be important?
To be relevant.
To be well, that's a good point. To be relevant.
And you were showing me something in a book about worrying, and I said, Keith, that is really good. I think we should read it for our friends today.
Yeah, this is by William Lyon Phelps. And this gentleman came up with 5 ways to banish worry. And he's got a pretty good story here, Gary, that I liked and what he found out. He says, when I was 24 years old, my eyes suddenly gave out. After reading 3 or 4 minutes, my eyes felt as if they were full of needles. And even when I was not reading, they were so sensitive I could not even face the window. I consulted every doctor. Nothing seemed to help. After 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I simply sat in a chair in the darkest corner of the room, waiting for bedtime. I was terrified. I feared I would have to give up my career as a teacher and go out west and get a job as a lumberjack. Then a strange thing happened, which shows the miraculous effects of the mind over the physical ailments. When my eyes were at their worst, that unhappy winter, I accepted an invitation to address a group of undergraduates. The hall was illuminated by huge rings of gas jets suspended from the ceilings. The lights pained my eyes so intensely that while sitting on the platform, I was compelled to look at the floor. Yet during my 30-minute speech, I felt absolutely no pain, and I could look directly at these lights without even blinking whatsoever. Then when the assembly was over, my eyes pained me again. I thought then that if I could keep my mind strongly concentrated on something for just 30 minutes, but for a week, I could be cured. Clearly, it was a case of mental excitement triumphing over bodily illness. Now, this first chapter on this, he's saying that because he was busy concentrating on the people and talking to them, and that he was engaged, he forgot all about the problem with his eyes, and the problem no longer existed.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Now, some of our friends may say, wait a minute, that won't work. He says he had a similar experience later while crossing the ocean. He had an attack of lumbago, so severe that he could not walk. I suffered extreme pain when I tried to stand up. While in that condition, I was invited to give a lecture on the shipboard. As soon as I began to speak, every trace of pain and stiffness left my body. I stood up straight, moved about perfectly, flexible, and spoke for an hour. When the lecture was over, I walked away to my stateroom with ease for a moment. I thought I was cured, but the cure was only temporary. The lumbago resumed as soon as I was alone. Now, you just talked about Napoleon with the ribbon and naming the people to be a baron. This gentleman has just expressed 2 illnesses that he had, and each time that he was engaged and he was concentrating, they went away.
He had serious problems with his thoughts.
That were physically making him ill.
Absolutely making him ill, because that's a classic, what they call a conversion disorder. He was converting a psychological problem into physical symptoms.
So you're saying because of his mind, he was physically experiencing that pain and the problem.
It was real. But when he couldn't think about it and could get his mind away from it, what was real happened, it went away.
Okay,
It was never there, except in his mind.
But the effects were real.
Yeah.
Okay, so then someone today would say, wait a minute, this gentleman was faking it. He was not faking it, was he?
No, it's real.
He had the real pain that his mind was causing him. He said, I have found that I can crowd worry out of my mind by reading a book. When I was 59, I had a prolonged nervous breakdown. During that period, I began to read David Alec Wilson's book, Life of Carlyle. It had a good deal to do with my convalescence because I became so absorbed in reading the book, I forgot about my depression.
Mm-hmm.
I find that absolutely fascinating.
Well, you see it over the years. I've been practicing law now for really close to 48 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it time after time happen to my clients where that they either get a conversion disorder psychologically and having problems, or sometimes what they call a somatoform disorder from the worry of the lawsuit.
The unknown, what's going to happen.
The constant going over and over and over in their heads, the lawsuit, the what ifs, all of those things, the uncertainty of whether or not they'll be able to get enough money to live. Is the jury, when they get in the courtroom, what's going to happen to them?
Is it too strong to use the word the torture of it all?
It literally tortures them to the point to where that they have all kinds of physical problems that they would not have had otherwise.
So not only do they not improve over the physical problems they really have, they add more problems to it.
And to take it back, the defense says, well, people should improve with these conditions with time. But yet your client doesn't. So what they say, okay, we've got studies now that show that people in litigation don't heal as fast or the way people do that are not in litigation. Therefore, we know they're after nothing but secondary gain.
And you're sitting here saying, no, you're right. People in litigation don't heal because they are being tortured by the unknown.
They can't sleep. They're scared to death. No good, decent person wants to be in a courtroom, ever, because that's one of our greatest fears is the legal system. Yet, through no fault of their own, people are harmed, severely damaged or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and because the insurance companies won't pay what they should, they end up in a courtroom, or the prospect of being in a courtroom. And emotionally, it is devastating to those people.
Well, first of all, none of us like criticism, right? Even the smallest criticism. You go into a courtroom, and what is the first thing you just did? You become one of these
People that just filed a frivolous lawsuits and
filed
they're
a-
trying to get something for nothing.
Yeah, and the neighbors are looking at you that you've done this. Now you got to walk into the courtroom, and the people in the courtroom are looking at you walking in, and you've been labeled.
But now that's exactly what you're reading in that book there that happened to that man. He has a psychological problem that
Well-
was converted into physical problems that were real.
He did that, and then he had another depression, and he used physical fitness to get over it. But he comes into the end to say this, Gary. I have also learned that patience and time have a way of resolving all of our troubles. When I am worried about something, I try to see my troubles in their proper perspective. I say to myself, 2 months from now, shall I be worrying about this bad break? So why worry about it now? Why not assume that same attitude I will have 2 months from now? You have said time and time again on this program, if you're going to have this same problem a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3, it's probably a problem. But more than likely, you won't have it.
More than likely, you won't have it a week from now.
Yeah.
More than likely.
Well, he ended up his speech with 5 steps that he ended up coming up with to get rid of worry. So I think this is pretty good. Number 1, live your life with gusto and enthusiasm. He says, I live every day as if it were the first day of my life and the last that I may ever see. That would produce gusto and enthusiasm,
Right.
wouldn't it? Number 2, he said, read an interesting book. When I had a prolonged nervous breakdown, I began reading. I was so absorbed, I forgot about the problem. Number 3, play a game. When I was terribly depressed, I forced myself to become physically active, even though I had pain. And almost every day, I felt better. Number 4, relax while you work. I long ago learned to avoid the folly of hurry, rush, and working under any kind of tension. And number 5, he says, I try to see my troubles for what they truly are and put them in perspective. And I say to myself, will I feel this way 2 months from now? Those are 5 great tips that anyone that is listening to this program that says, oh, but you don't know what I'm worrying about. You have no idea about all the things going on. This guy knows. He was depressed. He had pain. He was losing his eyesight. He had a lot of things happening to him.
And I didn't get finished with my quotations.
Oh, so you found a few more, huh?
So I've got more.
Okay.
Okay. Now here, there is no such thing as a great talent without great willpower.
Boy.
Is that true?
That is true, because we've seen all kinds of talented people who don't know they've got the talent.
Here's a good one. Intellect is invisible to the man who has none. Here's another one. Dr. Samuel Johnson. Nothing will ever be attempted if all possible objections must be first overcome. Now, how many times have I said that on this program?
You have said time and time again that brilliant people end up not achieving anything because they come up with all the reasons why it won't
They
work.
know why. That's right.
Oh, it'll never work. You could never do that.
Here's another one. Andrew Jackson. Take some time to deliberate, but when the time for action arrives, stop thinking and go on in.
Old Hickory.
Yep. Here's a good one. No one is more liable to make mistakes than the man who acts only on reflection. I believe that.
True, because you're going on history. But, you know, as you're reading these quotes, and we're reading from Dale Carnegie's book, I thought about the one guy who said, I can become an optimist by pulling a book. History has been full of worries, fears, troubles, and problems. And in the end, they all kind of sorted out on their own, didn't they?
Here's a good one. We're drowning in information and starving for knowledge.
Probably more true today than ever before.
And the last one I'm going to read you folks, my friend, because this may be the most appropriate one of all. Nothing is more terrible than ignorance in action.
It is fun to learn, isn't it?
It is. It's fun. I love quotations because, well, here's another one. Silence is the most perfect expression of scorn. 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. Ben Franklin.
I read that in the Old West magazine.
Never believe anything until it has been officially denied.
Then you know it's true. Gary, as you're reading that, I think back to the old quote, experience is the hardest way to learn, but the only way that a fool can learn. Let me ask you, why, with all of this information available to us, from the great people that you're reading from the Dale Carnegie book, to successful people who could be mentors around us, why do we feel compelled to go out on our own and make mistake after mistake instead of going to these books or to the individuals in your community and say, you've been through this, you've been there, you've done that, give me some advice as a mentor?
Same reason why when you bring something home that needs to be put together, you won't read the directions.
Yeah. So, yeah, you know that I put the can opener upside down. That's the first thing you do is you throw away the instructions.
That's right. Well, there's all kinds of instructions for life, starting with the 10 Commandments.
But there is so much pain and unhappiness that we could avoid if only
We're destined to do it. We will do it. We can't help it. It's our nature.
You know, I sit here and I think about mistake after mistake, and all I had to do was seek out the advice of others or to read some of these books from individuals who had suffered through it themselves.
Or just read the directions before you start putting it together.
Or just read the directions.
And why do we do that?
I don't know if it's an egotistical thing that we think we don't need help and that we want to be able to do everything on our own, or we think it's a weakness to admit that we don't know.
Maybe some of our friends out there knows why we do that.
You told me forever and ever, Keith, it's okay to say, I don't know, because no one knows everything.
Actually, very few people know anything.
Well, the more that
when you
we
get right down to it, as you and I are finding out among ourselves.
Yeah, the more we try to study and the more that we try to talk about being happy and the more that we delve into these books, I am finding out I know very little about it. And no wonder I've made all the mistakes.
Well, it's like that where you read about that guy with those clearly conversion disorders on his eyes and his back. It was all in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And how many times have we talked about how you've got to understand you're really not your thoughts and you have to distance yourself from them?
So with William, what William did is the thought came into his head and then he gave it credence. He bought into it. He was sitting in a room waiting for bedtime because he was losing his eyesight and it was so painful. And he had bought into it wholeheartedly, only to find out he didn't really have the problem.
He did have the problem, but it was in his mind. And he had not learned to distance himself from his thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, his thoughts consumed him and took over and caused him to literally have excruciating back pain.
Right.
Which wasn't real.
So when we were kids, Gary, and we'd been down the hollow and we'd played all day and we're walking back to the house and it's about dusk dark and we say, I'm so tired I can't put one foot in front of the other. And the neighbor's dog ran out and you took off like a lightning bolt. Is it similar to this, that we are imagining these things only to preoccupy our mind and it not be true?
If I could understand the complexity of the human mind, I would touch this microphone and put it out there so all my friends would have some understanding of the complexity of the human mind. It is huge, and I'm convinced we all somehow are connected together.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot more and bigger than any of us. I think that life, being a living being like we are, is a miracle beyond any miracle that could ever be fantasized or any magic could ever be fantasized. And somehow, if we just understood why it's the way it is, we are nothing but molecules and things that are put together. In other words, we're dust. But look what dust is. Dust is out here alive.
Yeah.
But if we die, over time, we will turn to dust. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, how is it that molecules
come together
and form a human being with all the things that it is, with the brain, with the emotions, with the ability to love, to hate, all of those things?
To feel.
To feel.
And then to have this computer up here that is so miraculous.
It's just, I'm like Einstein. It's enough for me to just be in awe of it all.
You know, I like what you said. If you could reach through the microphone and touch everybody and say, you will never worry again, you're going to be happy the rest of your life, what a great gift that would be. And for our friends that are listening to this, they're saying, oh, Keith, you and Gary got it worked out. Oh, no.
We're working on working it out.
When Gary came in for the radio program, the first thing I did was confess. Last week, I had a few little things going on, and here I caught Old Man Worry and the Chatterbox, and everything came in, and I was absolutely miserable until I caught myself and said, what are you really doing here?
Johnson rule number one, right?
Johnson rule number one. Then I had to sit down and say, just like this gentleman. Will I be thinking about this 3 years from now? No, I hope to be here 3 years from now.
That's right.
That's what my honest to God wish is that all of us are here 3 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 15. And whatever problem we got, we'll take care of it.
Just remember, all of those worries, my friend, that you have, most of them will never come about.
99%.
And the one that does, you'll be able to handle it easily.
The one that does, we can't do anything about.
That's right.
My friend, it is good to learn. It is good to laugh. And you know what I find about it? Just doing this program, I feel good. I don't even know what I was upset over last week.
What difference does it make?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Hey, you can catch Gary's television show Tuesday nights on WYMT, 7 p.m. on your CBS affiliate. Late night replays in Central Kentucky on your CBS affiliate, WKYT. And we get you started early on the week and the weekend on your Fox affiliate at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. As always, you can catch our program right here on your favorite radio station. And if you would like to leave a comment with Gary or maybe share some of your wisdom on how everybody can be happier and live a better life, Gary at GaryCJohnson.com. I never get tired of talking about being happier and living a better life.
Amen.
On behalf of Gary C. Johnson, I'm Keith Casebolt. Thank you so much for taking this time to spend with us. As always, Gary and I look forward to seeing you again next week, right here at this same time.
Thank you for listening to Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Until next week, may you be safe, blessed, and happy.
If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson cries for every dime.
I'm Gary C. Johnson. You've seen these billboards and ads that say size matters. I agree. The size that matters is the size of the results the law firm gets for their clients. We have several multi-million-dollar verdicts here in Kentucky. In fact, our firm owns the record for the single largest personal injury verdict in the state of Kentucky. That's the size that matters to you. In Kentucky, give our firm the call.